Nigeria is going through another phase of hardship resulting from environmental hazards caused by flooding. At the moment, many local governments across 29 states are currently submerged by flood, especially those which lie along the plains of River Niger and River Benue. Well, Arise News correspondent Ferdinand Roja reports.
A September report by the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA, shows that more than 300 people have lost their lives in flooding in Nigeria in 2022. It predicts that further heavy rain and dam releases are likely to worsen the situation. With the disaster unabated, several humanitarian crises loom. The United Nations has reported a cholera outbreak in parts of northeast Nigeria due to the widespread contamination of water sources, while thousands of families have had to relocate to higher grounds after their homes were flooded. Nigerians also fear the worst in agriculture. This is because many farmlands have been swept away, causing fears of an impending food crisis. The Kogi state government alone reports that over 600 hectares of rice farms have been submerged. Also, many farmlands have been reportedly destroyed by flood in Kebbi, Zamfara, Niger, Nasarawa, Rivers, Cross Rivers, Sokoto, Gombe, Bauchi, Adamawa, Jigawa, Edo, and some parts of Kwara states. A fallout of the flood and its effects is the fuel scarcity in the federal capital and environs. The Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority blames this on flooding in Lokoja, the Kogi state capital. The agency says vehicular movements on the Lokoja-Abuja Expressway have been grounded, affecting the distribution of petroleum products. While the devastation continued, government agencies appear to have no strategy to check the flooding. Rather, the resort is to blame games. The Nigeria Hydrological Services blames state and local governments for disregarding adequate and timely warnings and weather advisories issued by the various federal government agencies to avert flood disaster in 2022. The situation is also blamed on the release of water from the Lagdo Dam by the Cameroonian authorities, creating a heavy impact on communities with water banks along the courses of rivers Niger and Benue. Together with these are the issues of climate change and human factors such as improper agricultural practices, blockage of drainage and deforestation. Meanwhile, the National Emergency Management Agency warns that the 2022 flood disaster will be worse than that of 2012, and at least 363 people were killed and over 2.1 million people displaced. As the impact of the floods continue, Nigerians have called on the federal government to take proactive measures that will channel excess water to productive uses. Ferdinand Roja, Arise News.
Well, let's bring in the Director General of Nigeria's Hydrological Services Agency, Clement, for more on this flooding crisis. I took a name classes to pronounce that name. Thank you so much for coming on the news tonight.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here today.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Let's begin from where our correspondent Ferdinand ended that report, using water, but how worried should we be with this level of flooding that we're seeing?
Like you rightly mentioned, or actually although quoting NEMA, that the 2022 flood incident has exceeded that of 2012. And hydrologically, it's like having a kind of return interval. That in hydrology, certain amount of rainfall or weather issues have a cyclic reputation.
Right.
That what happened in 2012 is somehow repeating itself in 2022. That's a 10 years interval. That's what we have at hand. Yes, many people have been speaking about the 2022 flood incidents. We talk about the release of water, excess water from Lagdo Dam, that's Cameroon, and so on. But from facts available to us, most of the flood were caused by the local rainfall within Nigeria.
Okay.
What is coming in from Lagdo Dam wasn't what should have caused the devastation we are witnessing. so much rainfall, maybe this attributable to climate change, whereby you are having a kind of rainfall measured in millimeters that you should have for a whole year in a particular community or locality. You witness it in 3 days,
Wow.
in a few hours.
That's huge.
That's a heavy rainfall of heavy amount and then a shorter duration. That naturally translates or gravitates to flooding. That's what have been happening. Go to Jigawa, in fact, several states in Nigeria.
Right.
So yes, there's a spill of water from Cameroon since 13th of September. But that is not actually what caused the magnitude of flooding we are having in Nigeria.
So, well, according to Ferdinand's report there, I mean, your agency, Hydrological Services Agency, has been blaming state governments, while the state governments have been blaming the federal government. Speak to us about that, because my point really, I recall the last time you were here, you actually, gave out very strong warnings to the states, and in spite of those warnings, we have this situation on our hands.
See, there are 3 tiers of government.
Right.
The predicting agencies or forecasting agencies are at the federal level. It doesn't stop the state government to also have a replica of the same in their states. I was in China, even in Shanghai, about 26 million, the province. Their meteorological agency is almost as bigger than this Hilton, Transcorp. That is Shanghai. You may look at it as maybe a conglomeration of states, like taking Nigerian population. This is different from China, CMA, China Meteorological Agency.
Right.
But the one of that particular province is quite massive. Now, at the federal level, what I mentioned that to say that nothing stops the state. Each state has a state university. Some have up to 2 federal universities, private universities. We even have manpower resident in those places that can help you also do the forecasting we are doing at the federal level. But that is aside. After the predictions have been made by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, NIMET, and the Nigerian Hydrological Service Agency, this is made public. In our own case, NISA. This is a scientific product of international standard all over the world, what we are using to do the prediction. The Honorable Minister of Water Resources, Engineer Suleiman Adam, always personally authors letters to individual state governors. Each state governor outlining these local government areas, locations in each state that are likely to be inundated in the case of flood in the year, and also try to give certain things you could do.
Right.
You don't expect federal. Like we are here, we move to, I don't know which state you can mention, and begin to clear their drainages for them.
Maybe you want to talk about Kogi, for example, where
Kogi, for instance,
we saw that really bad.
We are begin to clean their drainages, or there's a state you get, like there's a slide there. Anthropogenic activities, people dropping waste, they ought to be cleared. I'm certain of what is happening here in Abuja, the FCT. Close to about 700 houses have been removed by the government of FCT. And you can see them at work. About 2 weeks ago, they convened relevant, the FCT Management Agency, FEMA, brought together people that will work for them in rural areas, traditional rurals were there too. And you see them, they are working in different localities. The FEMA, FCT, Emergency Management Agency, not NEMA, not NISA, not NIMET. So at the state level, they have relevant organs or agencies like town planning authorities, state ministries of environment, water resources, and so on and so on. What are they doing?
Okay, so now that we have found ourselves here, because you seem to be saying that state governments have been caught napping because there was prediction, letters were sent to them, yet we have the situation. Now that we have the situation on our hands, can we use water to our advantage? I mean, you are a waterman, you understand water a lot. Can we use water to our advantage? And then how do we begin to organize on a regional scale to prevent the impacts we get from this opening of dams, even though you say what we are experiencing at the moment is more of rains and not from the dam in Cameroon. But we do have those opening of dams that cause impact as well. How do we do all of this?
Just before I walked in here, I was on a conversation with a friend and colleague in US. He mentioned what happened when he went to the field here in Nigeria. and Anambra. Now, we have been speaking repeatedly. The states that are contiguous to rivers Niger and Benue, about 13 of them, can't you construct detention basins? A kind of artificial lakes by the banks of the rivers Niger and Benue. You can create a battery of sorts depending on the land mass, properly constructed, where you can take the water some kilometers away, create a very big basin or reservoir. That when the water level is getting to a certain threshold, River Niger or River Benue, the excess will be diverted and be trapped there. You can use it for year-round educated agriculture. There are several things you can do for you, like what Jabi Lake we have here. So we've been saying, see, I have been part of the Nigerian team to negotiate with other African countries in the West and Central Africa about how much water because Nigeria is at the bottom of a basin called Niger Basin. 8 other countries are above. So whatever happens, they come down to Nigeria before emptying to the Atlantic Ocean. So when we are trying to ask them, please don't take so much, take little, so that we will not be shortchanged. The question put across to Nigeria, which you cannot answer, is that the ones coming to you, you don't use it. We lose several billions of cubic meters of fresh water to the Atlantic every year. And now, this is a very good resource that we can trap here in Nigeria. Right.
In 30 seconds, I mean, beyond advising states on what to do, have you been having any kind of interface with them? How have they been reacting or responding,
we do carry out a sensitization program.
Right.
We group states into zones, depending on the level and the kind of red flag we have raised in those areas. We bring them together. We do the translation in the 3 major languages in Nigeria. And then we call them together. These states, these are the things we have. That was ahead of the flooding. These are the things we have seen that is likely to happen, that are likely to happen in your state. These are the measures we should take. So we try as much as we can to move from one zone. We can't go to all the 36 states of the Federation.
All right.
So the flood is still here with us.
We'll have to leave it there. Clement is the DG, Director General, Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency. Thank you so much for joining us on Newsnight.